Ready? Okay. Okay, good afternoon. My name is G.K. Manius, and I'm with Tarrant County. And this is our second interview with the press as it relates to the H1N1 influenza. What I'd like to do before we get started is to recognize several elected officials that are in the room today. We have Judge Glenn Whitley is with us, and also Commissioner Roy C. Brooks is with us, and they will be available for questions at the conclusion of the news conference. What I'd like to do is also introduce the two people that are behind me. Most of you know these individuals. Lou Brewer is our Director of Public Health, and Dr. Sandra Parker is our Health Authority for Tarrant County. What I'd like to do now is to simply go through the agenda itself and tell you how we plan to move forward on this. First of all, you're going to be hearing an update from Ms. Brewer as to the data that just has recently been released within the last 5 to 10 minutes on our website. It's our 3 o'clock update. So the information that you get today is the most up-to-date information that we have available. Well, then I'll come back up again and talk to you a little bit as far as just simply providing an overview as to where we are today, what we know, and how we're going to be moving forward. And then finally, Dr. Parker will be here, and she will take questions from you at that time. So with that being said, I'll introduce Lou Brewer.
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. As Mr. Manius just indicated, we've just released our 3 o'clock information. You should find that up on the screen here, and it is posted on our website. And this is the latest information that we have. Yesterday, we told you, we reported at this time that we had 20 new probables. This morning, we had 13 additional new probables. So the information that was posted at 3 o'clock is speaking to a total of 33 probables, 20 from yesterday, 13 from today. We have no new confirmed cases reported to us as of now. All right. Now, of those 33 probables from yesterday and today, we have found that 9 of those are out of county and will be handled at the regional level. We still have 5 of those reports that are pending investigation. So the information that you have that is posted and that you're seeing behind you reflects 19 of those 33 probables. And this is the information that we have to date. And when we get to the question and answer part, we'll be glad to talk with you about that. Thank you.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about just a general overview of where we were, where we are today, and how we're going to move forward. First of all, it goes without saying that this issue that has arisen is something that's new for us, not only in Tarrant County but the state of Texas and also for the United States. Most of the time, whenever we have flu-like symptoms, we've identified that symptom or that flu strain and have created vaccines in order to provide preventive care. Unfortunately, the H1N1 is not one of those. This is a strain that there is no vaccine available at this time. We're now in the beginning of the second week of our activity. Our first activity began last Sunday night, not yesterday, but a week ago yesterday. And quite frankly, the information that we were receiving from the various sources was somewhat sketchy. And some of the recommendations that we were receiving, both from the CDC and the state, tended to change as we became more aware of what this strain was and what the potential was. Since that very time, our public health department has reached out to our partners, that being local governments and school districts. We've also reached out to the medical community and have been in constant contact with that community as we have moved forward. Let me give you some examples. Dr. Parker, who is our local health authority, communicates on a daily basis with the health authorities of the 4 large counties within this region, Collin, Denton, Dallas, and Tarrant. Also included in those conversations is the health authority for the region, for the state. Our goal in those conversations are to discuss what we are seeing, what they are seeing, and what strategies we are implementing. The important thing to remember is that those strategies, even though we're in a regional effort there's been a consistent message from both CDC and the state that options that are taken, or actions that are taken, are left to the local jurisdictions. And that is the protocol in which we have functioned over these last 7 days. Whenever an issue arose, the Public Health Department analyzed the problem, met with our local partners, and discussed strategies on how to move forward in dealing with these specific issues. In addition to talking with the local health authorities, we're on a daily contact from the Public Health Department with infectious disease nurses that are in all of our hospitals, so that we keep a finger to the pulse, if you will, on what's going on in our community. We think that it's important. We've also met with the public hospital system here to ensure that anyone who presents themselves with flu-like symptoms, that they receive treatment, or at least testing, and if they do have the system or the test results that require them to be sent back to the Public Health Department for analysis, for further analysis, then they receive treatment at that time. I really believe that as we move forward, that we are gaining a much greater knowledge of this issue. It's important to know that even as we gain that greater knowledge, the messages that we are seeing from both the federal and state level are shifting, and we will take those into consideration as we make our decisions in the coming weeks and months on this particular issue. If you look at the chart that's immediately over my shoulder, I think the one thing that's important that you see is that it's really the first column, the daily samples received from the region. We believe that we're seeing somewhat of a downturn in the number of samples that are actually submitted for our analysis. I think we'll have a much better picture if we'll look at what happens tomorrow and the next day, because obviously the weekend is something that has slowed the submission of samples to the health department. Quite frankly, I don't believe that there's anyone either in this room or in this state or this country that knows exactly where we're going on this issue. It's something, though, that we want to reassure you that we are on top of it, that it's our intent to stay on top of it. We're working 7 days a week with our partners and internally also to ensure that whenever there's any change, one way or the other, that we are not only aware of it at the health department, but that we effectively communicate that change to our partners. We then will be presenting updates on what you see today on our web. We will have 2 updates on weekdays and currently 1 update for every weekend day. Those updates should be there somewhere around 10:30 in the morning, and then between 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I can't stress to you the importance of the fact that this is an evolving issue, and it's something that we're paying a tremendous amount of attention to. We're applying a tremendous amount of county resources, municipal resources, and other governmental resources to. Our goal is to ensure that we are knowledgeable on the extent of this particular illness and that we can provide our community with the assurances that they need to live their daily lives. With that, we will go ahead and I will ask Dr. Parker to come forward if you have any questions.
Good afternoon.
Can you go over the confirmed cases?
Okay, we have 8 confirmed in Tarrant County.
We might want to repeat remember, we're going to need to
Sorry.
repeat the question. So,
She asked a question about the confirmed cases. There are 8 confirmed cases in Tarrant County.
that been the same?
That has been the same since
Since the 2nd.
Saturday,
Since Saturday?
Saturday the 2nd.
That's remained
That's
the
right.
same since Saturday.
That's when we got the last update from the CDC.
How are those patients?
They're recovering well.
Okay, well, what we'll need to do is make sure that before we answer the question, let's make sure we repeat the question, okay?
How long does it usually take from the time that you get a sample of your lab till you can get it down to a probable status or whatever and send it off to the CDC and it comes back? What kind of time frame do you have?
Okay, the question is regarding the time frame from once we receive the specimen in the Tarrant County Public Health Lab to when that specimen is ready to be processed by the CDC if it's determined to be a probable. Is that correct?
Yes, and then how long it takes the CDC to get back? Because originally, I think, looking at 48-hour window.
Right. Right. Once we have received the specimen at Tarrant County Public Health, we have been able to process all of our specimens within 24 hours of receiving those. The testing time frame takes approximately 4 to 6 hours. And once we have determined that it is a probable, as long as it's not the weekend, we send it out in the next available shipment to go to the CDC. Our CDC results have been taking approximately 4 to 5 days to return. And that's for confirmation.
So the 33 probable cases, at what point do you expect them all to be determined, exactly if they are confirmed cases or not?
Repeat the question.
Okay, so she's asking of the 33 probables that we have today, when do we expect an answer? Of the 33 probables that we have today, I believe they were all being packaged to be shipped to the CDC today, so in approximately 4 to 5 days, we would expect an answer. But again, that is dependent upon the CDC. That's the time frame that it's been for last week. They are receiving a huge amount of specimens from all over the country, so we cannot guarantee in 4 to 5 days we'll have those results, but that has been that's been the time frame in the past.
Does that help or hinder you, that lag time? What does that mean to Tarrant County?
She's asking if the lag time is a hindrance. Of course, everyone wants real-time information. So if we could have the results sooner, we would like them. But at this point, because of changing in the way that we're recommending both treatment and what to do with different facilities such as schools regarding probable versus confirmed, at this point it isn't really an issue. At this point I'm not saying that a probable equals a confirmed, but the current guidance is saying that we can act on probables, whereas before we were waiting for confirmation. And that changed over the last week as well, but that's the current guidance.
So you're treating a probable case as if it were a confirmed case, so that's the way you're suggesting that the school districts and others do it?
Yes, at this time, because that's the guidance that we've received, and that's basically the information that we're receiving from the CDC. I have not factored in the last specimens that we received. I think we did, but approximately the great majority of the specimens that we're sending to the CDC are coming back as swine influenza. Now, granted, I think if you look at the data on the chart behind me, but I don't want to turn around, I think you'll see that there are 2 negatives there. So if we, on the chart already, so you can see that not all of the specimens that have been sent to the CDC have been returned as confirmed swine influenza, but a majority have. Now, again, there's still some waiting to be processed there, so you're not going to be able to exactly look at the chart and say, okay, these numbers add up, because they're not. Some are being processed, but of the ones that we have received back, the great majority of those have been confirmed as swine influenza.
And just on I see everyone is looking at the chart to determine where that number 2 is. It is not shown on this particular chart.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a variation of the chart. On one chart, we did have that number, but I apologize. We did change the chart.
So we still have 50 some that we're still waiting for them to come back from CDC?
Approximately, yes.
Okay, and And if
I can't see the chart right now, and I don't want to turn around for this. Okay.
it's been sent away,
Okay. And we've had 8 back, then approximately, then we do have 50-something.
well, we got 2 negatives, so I'm thinking.
Okay.
So maybe 54, and we can assume that that percentage then is going to come back pretty high.
Yes, based on what has occurred in the past, what we've sent, there's been a high probability that have returned positive. And so if the same continues, then yes, we would expect a high number of those to come back confirmed as well. But things change, and we're not sure.
Okay. And the fact that you only had 18 submitted, it looks like for 5-4, what does that tell us? It's down from 144 to 5-2. So what does that tell us?
Honestly, not much. Again, you have to factor in the weekend. Was it slow over the weekend? Maybe not a lot of people went to be evaluated. Maybe they just stayed at home. And so by the time we got the specimens, we didn't have that many. So it's important to know that you know, there was a possible slowdown, but we don't know if that trend will continue. One data point does not make a trend.
Are you making recommendations to the school districts about whether or not they should close, or those totally independent decisions you're making on that?
No, we make recommendations to the school district based on the information for the one school, for their group of schools, and what they should do with their activities. We make recommendations. We also factor in what's happening in the local area.
Can you tell us what you recommended, for instance, for the schools in Arlington, Kennedale, Lake Worth?
I can tell you what I recommended for Lake Worth. I can't tell you what I recommended for Arlington because there is a different health authority in the city of Arlington, and I can tell you what we will be recommending to Kennedale. Okay, in Lake Worth, I have spoken with Dr. Cooper, who is the superintendent of the Lake Worth Independent School District, and I did recommend closure of that particular elementary school. We did discuss it, and based on some other information within the school district, possibly siblings in other schools, which I can't confirm that information, but possibly siblings in other schools. And to err on the side of caution, I believe that she has chosen or will choose to close the entire district for the time that we have recommended.
Which would be,
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, and I would be in support of that decision. Although I did make a recommendation for one, I am wholeheartedly supportive of her decision to close the entire district. She is the official at that school, and she knows her school district and her schools better than I do.
that time period would be,
That time period, based on the case presentations, would be through the 8th and to return on the 11th.
and for Kennedale, same recommendation?
And for Kennedale, approximately the same recommendation. Yes, I believe it was one school there, and I will make the recommendation for closure of that school for approximately the same time period.
So you didn't make the recommendation yet? You haven't had that conversation yet?
I have not had that conversation yet. Unfortunately, we have not been able to reach the superintendent of Kennedale. I believe that they have a day off today from school for Cinco de Mayo. So I hate that we're discussing Kennedale when I haven't spoken with them yet.
Have you received any reports of students from these schools congregating that would be of concern to you?
I have not received any of those reports, but yes, students at schools that have closed, I would be concerned if they were congregating in large groups. The recommendations when we send them to the school district are that the students should not congregate, so I would be concerned about that. I would hope that the parents and the students would have a discussion about, right now the best thing to do is stay at home. They don't get to play their video games very often, so maybe they can catch up on it now. Or they could be doing their homework that they're missing right now. Maybe an equal portion of both.
Yesterday, there was a business that was on the probable list, a woman that was at a business. Are you recommending to businesses close too? Is that across the board, or?
No, it's not across the board, and I have not recommended to a business that they close.
Would you, if they're getting probables?
I would have to look at what type of business it was. I could make that recommendation, and, but it would possibly be a very rare occurrence that I would do that. But yes, I could make that recommendation to a business, but it would depend on what type of business it is, who their clients are, that sort of thing. What type of contact would they have with the people? I'm sorry, and I'm forgetting to repeat the questions.
This might be plowed ground, but the 8 confirmed cases, they are in what cities?
The question is what cities are the 8 confirmed cases in? I believe 2 are in Euless and 6 are in Fort Worth.
And that information is on the website.
Just scroll down.
Are they all children, school-age people, or adults, or mixed?
In Fort Worth, all of the confirmed cases are children, school-age children. In Euless, there is 1 adult and 1 child.
In these new probable cases today, I only count 13 children. Are there more adults in these new probables today?
There may be, but again, some of the probable cases are still pending investigation, so I don't know the breakdown of adults and children in today's probables.
Are you all getting any more information about how this is being spread?
Are we getting any more information on how this is being spread? By that question, do you mean how transmissible the virus is, or do you mean specifically how the virus is spread?
Is it being spread from one person to another at schools? Is that pretty much what the assumption is at this point?
Well, that's a good question. We don't know that it's specifically being spread at schools, but we are seeing clusters in schools, and so you can say that right now, with the data we have, that is where we're seeing transmission. Now, to me, I wasn't sure how to answer your question because we do know how influenza virus is spread. It's spread by droplets and close contact with other individuals. If you're coughing, you put your hand then to your eyes, your nose. So that's what I wasn't sure what you meant. But yes, we're seeing.
Obviously, everybody's not getting it,
Right,
and
and
close contact with one another in the classroom.
right, and children tend to not wash their hands as often as we would prefer them to. So that can be a factor that we're seeing more in the schools. As far as transmissibility goes, what has been reported from the state is within household contacts, you're seeing about 10 to 25% of people who live with someone who has been identified with swine flu. We're seeing that type of transmission within a family unit, and of course they're much closer than they are at school, and so we're seeing maybe up to 1/4 of those.
So you're talking about just a portion of the family?
Just a portion of the family gets it. So not everyone who comes in contact with that person would acquire the virus.
How does that compare to just a general seasonal flu?
The question is, how does that compare to a general flu? I think it's approximately the same. Because again, not everyone in the house, if you have seasonal flu, not everyone in the house gets it sometimes, but again, that is dependent on the strain as well. Some seasons we see, if we see one case in the house, we see everyone in the house with it. Some seasons we don't. So that is variable as well.
Do you think adults have the built-up immunity to this? We've seen so few cases of adults, or are they just washing their hands more?
There's a question of, do adults have a built-up immunity to this? No, I don't think so. This is a novel virus, so we wouldn't expect adults to have immunity to that. They may just be washing their hands more. They may be using hand sanitizer. And as adults, we're not, although we may work in offices, we're not usually in that close of contact with someone for that period of time. And we tend to practice better cough and sneeze etiquette than children.
Doctor, you mentioned Friday that you might recommend closing adjacent schools. Have you progressed on any more recommendations on adjacent districts or adjacent schools?
The question was, I had mentioned Friday that the CDC had different guidance regarding closure of schools in close proximities or districts in close proximity. And at this time, No, I'm not recommending any further closures just because of proximity at this point. We're taking it on a case-by-case basis and seeing and monitoring what we're seeing in an individual school in the area around that school and making decisions based on that. At this point, I don't see that recommending closure of neighboring schools that have not had a probable case is necessary at this time. Situation could change, but I don't see that at this time.
So you don't expect to get any more results back until later in the week, right?
No, ma'am. The question is, do I expect to get results back until later in the week? I don't expect to receive results from the CDC until later in the week, but we're processing specimens every day, so I do expect to receive more probables as we continue to test.
But you can't get a confirmation until you get it back from the CDC.
Right. At this point, I cannot get a confirmation until we get it back from the CDC.
So are you not anticipating any more closures, at least through the first part of this week?
Well, again, though, the guidance has changed, and we can act on probables rather than acting on confirmed. And so there could be additional closures throughout the week based on the information that we are receiving and processing. But we are no longer waiting for the CDC confirmation before we make these recommendations.
So you're not getting constant feedback from them once you said it's going to take, you're not expecting more confirmation from CDC until later in this week?
The question is, are we not getting constant feedback from the CDC regarding the testing? No, we're not getting constant feedback on that. We don't. But again, it's as we send it to the CDC, that timestamp is for those specimens that we sent on that day. So there could be specimens from Tarrant County that are at the CDC being tested, and we may have some results on them tomorrow. Don't hold me to that. I don't know. I'm just saying theoretically we could have some results back tomorrow. Of the specimens that we just sent, I would expect 4 to 5 days.
I would say, though, that we are in contact and communication with CDC on a daily basis. This issue, I think your question was just as related to when we might see some of the test results back. But every day, we either talk through the state or directly to CDC, and we share our information and their information. So.
Yes, I don't mean to imply that we're not receiving any feedback or any information from the CDC just regarding the test results. We receive different bulletins from the CDC at least 3 to 4 times a day. So the CDC is in touch with us.
And could you tell, what symptoms are you seeing? And what are the worst symptoms that you have seen from this?
Well, I can tell you what symptoms have been reported to me because I haven't personally seen anyone with these symptoms. What they're noticing is a higher fever than usual. We have said a temperature greater than 100, but actually they're seeing a fever, a temperature a little bit higher than that. So I would estimate, say, 102, but that was what was reported on a recent state conference call. Also, we have seen a little more people present, or it's been reported, with some of the other symptoms such as nausea and maybe some stomach concerns. But the most common thing is a cough or cough and fever, and just your general respiratory symptoms. But they have reported that the temperature has seemed to be a little more elevated
Than with the standard flu?
than with the standard flu.
Is anyone hospitalized at this time?
I don't know if the question is anyone hospitalized at this time. I don't know if anyone is still in the hospital at this time.
How many were in the hospital?
We have had 2 hospitalizations, and I don't think they are still hospitalized. And so, but I don't know that based on the new probables that we have. But I don't think so.
Can you describe the cases who are waiting to hear back, the probable cases, what the treatment is during this time that they're waiting, and how long they would be infectious, or whatever you would term it?
Okay. The question is regarding to the treatment of a probable case. Well, one thing that needs to be pointed out is that we don't wait for CDC confirmation regarding treatment of a probable case. A probable case at the time that they have been seen in the doctor's office are usually started on their treatment, which is oseltamivir, commonly known as Tamiflu, and that course is medication. If it's a child, it's based on weight, and it's taken twice a day for 5 days. And what happens to them during this time is they take that medication. They can also take medications such as acetaminophen or Tylenol for their fever, or ibuprofen for their fever. We are not recommending the use of aspirin in a child with this viral illness, as we don't with any viral illness. And then the last part of your question was, how long do we think that they are infectious? Approximately 7 to 10 days, and those are the numbers that we're using along with the CDC guidance is how we base our recommendations for school closure, based on the period of infectiousness and when they were last at school, those sorts of issues.
Are the majority of people getting in soon enough to benefit from the Tamiflu? They have to take it within 48 hours?
The question is, are the majority of people getting in soon enough to take benefit of the Tamiflu within 48 hours? And I would say yes to that, but again, if you're determined as to be a probable case, you can start Tamiflu after that 48-hour period. It just may not be of as much benefit as if you had started it within the 48-hour period. Now, I have not heard report of anyone who was determined to be a probable and it was out of the 48-hour window, that they did not receive treatment. I have not heard of that.
Doctor, is there anybody that you haven't been able to locate out of these probables when the test results come back?
The question is there anyone that we haven't been able to locate regarding that? It has been difficult on some, but I believe that we have been able to locate everybody that we have investigated so far.
We might also mention that when we use the term investigated, what that means is that, well, let me ask Ms. Brewer to go ahead and define what that means.
On a daily basis, when we get a reportable communicable disease, our epidemiology division does a contact investigation, which means they interview the person with the reported illness or the person that can help answer the questions, and we determine who else may have come in close, and that's a very important word, close contact with that individual. Then depending on what the illness is, and in this case we know it's the H1N1, the determination is made that those close contacts will need prophylaxis to help prevent them from getting the illness. We have to look at what was their exposure time, and then determine the medication that they would receive. So our epidemiology staff are calling, that's usually the best way to get in touch quickly, are calling the contacts, informing them of the situation, and then determining the best way to get their medication prescription to them, and then they get their prescription and take the medication. So we do this type of work on a daily basis. This is certainly on a much larger scale.
I just wanted to add one comment regarding prophylaxis of the close contacts. CDC guidance has changed recently, and not everyone who is a close contact does require prophylaxis at this point. The CDC has made the recommendation that due to the severity of the illness, which is mild, that we're seeing in the United States, that only close contacts with chronic medical conditions who would be at high risk from complications from an influenza-type illness should receive prophylaxis. So earlier last week, while the effort was made for all close contacts to receive prophylaxis, that is not the current recommendation. Now, granted, we are still calling all of those close contacts to monitor their condition and to ask different questions about their exposure, but not all close contacts are receiving prophylaxis.
Okay, just a closing comment that, as you know, as we move forward on this, we learn more and more about this issue. And our knowledge base today is much greater than it was a week ago today. And we know that as we move forward, that knowledge base will expand even more. We are going to continue to reach out to our partners and expand those contacts. Our goal is to simply have the community as a large, the professional community, the health professional community, and the schools to all work with us, and we work with them to ensure that we limit the spread of this issue to the greatest possible extent. With that, we'll thank you for attending today. Just a note, we will be meeting again at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and it'll be here in the Commissioner's courtroom. Thank you.